Welcome back to the Joe Miller Show, KON Hot Talk, 1080 AM, 95.1 FM. This show is made possible by the McPherson Tax Defense Group. 1-800-BEAT-IRS, beatirs.com. That's B-E-A-T, IRS, serving Alaskans, Americans since 1978 with 2 generations of tax defense attorneys. We have online with us Bill Minnix. Bill served in the military, Vietnam vet, and has gone public with a story which I think is very important. Of course, most of the listeners out there that are regulars know that I spent a little bit of time in service, have a lot of friends that still remain in, follow what happens there. But his story is shocking. It talks about the issue of sexual abuse in the military. We put up a number of stories on restoringliberty.com about this issue and about the increase, by the way, over the last several years in sexual assaults, at least reported sexual assaults in the military, and quite a bit of male-on-male sexual assault as well. Bill Minnix is here to tell us his story. Bill, thank you for joining us on the Joe Miller Show.
Joe, it's really a pleasure to be on your show today and to be a voice for our MST community for ending military sexual trauma. First, I'd like to say Happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there who, to me, wrote a check to the United States of America for a sum of up to their lives for our freedoms. So happy Veterans Day, everybody.
I second that. And by the way, listeners out there that want to follow along, we put up Bill's story entitled Military Sexual Trauma, and you'll probably hear Bill refer to that as MST, Mike Sierra Tango, Military Sexual Trauma Survivor, Breaking the Silence, the Black Box of Shame, Guilt, and Fear. This went up a couple of days ago. Tell us what has compelled you to go public with this story, and then you can give us the details of it.
Certainly. The reason I decided to come forward was I woke up one day sick and tired of living the life that I was living and was wondering why I was living this life where I was inside of a black box of shame, guilt, and fear that caused me to act out, that caused me to do things that within myself I didn't want to do, but I couldn't understand why I did them. So with the help of a community in Pacific City and the help of an MST director in Montana, after I attempted suicide in 2013, I came to realization that I suffered from moderate to severe PTSD, and it was related to the military and military sexual trauma.
And it's your view that coming public with this will not only help the military address it, but also help those that are suffering from it to do those things that get them the treatment they need to avoid the same thing that you went through. Is that right?
Absolutely. As I work with our MST community, which is both genders, there's a lot of concerns out there with still military sexual trauma being a dark secret that the military and our own Congress people do not want to address head on.
A very unpopular subject, even amongst conservatives. You know, you don't want to say anything like that because we'll disparage the military. I mean, I think that's kind of the thought process that goes through the mind of some of these folk that don't want to address it. Why don't you tell our audience what happened to you and kind of your, shall we say, life story to the point that we're at today?
Yes, Joe. I grew up like any other teenager and admired our service people. It was during the Vietnam era. And I admired my brother-in-law, who was a captain in the Air Force. And, of course, a lot of us remember Roger Ramjet, the cartoon. Roger Ramjet is a hero of our nation. And that stuck with me through my adolescence. And during my sophomore year, getting to know my brother-in-law, I decided I wanted to join the Air Force. I got sick and tired of seeing the Vietnam vets come back and being spit on and yelled at. And to me, that was very disrespectful. And I wanted to serve my country proudly. So at the age of 17, I gave up my graduation, gave up my prom, and joined the U.S. Air Force. Took the oath like any other veteran does, and went through basic training. Basic training went real well. I actually came out of basic training as an airman first class, and then I was sent to tech school at Keesler Air Force Base. During basic training, my aptitude test classified me a little bit higher than what I had signed up for. I had signed up for photography, so they placed me in electronics, repairman of 30331, which I'm sure a lot of people out there know what that is. And going through tech school, the first couple weeks went fine, and then there was a group of people that started basically to go out drinking, and they would ask the young recruits to join them, and we thought that was a thing to do at that age. I was still 17. So I went drinking with the fellas, and we ended up at a place called the White House. The White House is, ironically, a resort that closed down but now is reopened in Gulfport, Mississippi. And I was intoxicated quite a bit. They contributed to the delinquency of all of us. And as I look back at it now and today, I see it as a fraternity where they used, where basically they raped us. I was raped at 17. This happened quite often. I was intoxicated, wasn't in my right mind. There were sometimes, even today, I can't remember exactly what has happened. But through therapy, a lot of this is starting to come out. And sometimes it's difficult to talk about, but to be a voice for change, we have to talk about it.
Were these people in your chain of command, or I take it because they were senior, obviously, to you, but did they have any command influence over you at all?
Yes, they did. Several of them did. I can remember their faces very much so today. They were in the command, and also one of them was an instructor at Keesler Air Force Base. And I would see these people quite often when I returned to base, report to base, my duty the next day at the classes. And after a while, seeing these people, I couldn't handle it anymore. I went AWL. I refused to go back. And Joe, I was gone for 17 days with the AWL, shacked up with a person in Gulfport. And I would sneak on base. I would go to the chow hall, show my ID at the front gate, and I would sneak on base to eat because I had no money. And I felt my life just falling apart at that time, and couldn't turn to anybody. 17 days later of AWL, I was arrested by the military police, and they call them security in the Air Force, and was taken to the brig and received counsel. Counsel was an officer of the Air Force, and talked to the officer and told him I had been raped, and that's why I went AWL. Well, nothing was done. They put me back on duty. I never got to see the reports from my counsel. Went back on duty, kept seeing my assailants, and I went AWL again, this time for a very short period. Ironically, I got arrested leaving the base. I had snuck on again, and I got arrested leaving the base, and I was court-martialed. On my court-martial, it says that I was a deserter, and I find that quite ironic because to be a deserter, even in the time of war, you have to be gone 30 days. So that's bogus. Those records are bogus. They also left out my counsel statement that I was raped. They instead said I had personal problems and that I was being discharged for the good of the Air Force, which I do have some folks out in Washington, D.C., that are helping me with upgrading that discharge because there's no such kind of a discharge like that.
So the folk that did this to you, was there ever any accountability at all for them?
None whatsoever. It was hushed. It was kept quiet. It was never brought up again. I tried to bring it up when I went before what they call it court-martial. The court-martial that I remember, and you got to remember that was over 40 years ago. I was 18 years old. The court-martial that I remember was a captain and one other person. I don't remember having any counsel, even though in my discharge paper it says counsel. I had never had a medical examination, which is required by law when you are raped. And there is no medical records of them doing a complete exam for rape when I was discharged.
How long did it take for you to come forward and tell this story outside of the military circles?
As the title says, shame, guilt, and fear, I carried this most of my life, Joe, from the time I was 18 years old, and my sister picked me up at the airport. I felt very shameful that I had been stripped of my uniform. My airman first class was taken away from me, and I was told never to return to the base. I carried this shame, guilt, and fear for over 40 years until in 2013 I had enough. I didn't know why I didn't feel normal like everybody else around me was, and I wasn't. Everything I did, I failed in for those 40 years. Although I feel I'm very intelligent, very good at what I do, I never stuck with it. I was always running. I became a runner.
We're going to turn back to that point after these messages. Very compelling story. Again, during the break, if anybody wants to read up on the article from Bill that we put up 2 days ago at joemiller.us. The title is Military Sexual Trauma, Survivor Breaking the Silence, the Black Box of Shame, Guilt, and Fear. Stay with us. Be right back with Bill Minnix after this. Welcome back to the Joe Miller Show. We're on with Bill Minnix. He wrote the article, Military Sexual Trauma, Survivor, Breaking the Silence, the Black Box of Shame, Guilt, and Fear. We put that up a couple of days ago at joemiller.us. We were talking right before the break about the most recent date, 2013. Why don't you just bring us up to speed to current date from 2013, Bill, when you started to go public with what happened?
Yes, Joe. It was 2013 when I decided that I was going to end it all, and I attempted suicide in Montana, Kalispell, Montana. At that time, I was going to drive my car off a cliff, and a car pulled up as I was about to do it, and I couldn't do it. I didn't want anybody around. I drove back. I was able to call a hotline, 211, and the hotline asked me that I'd been in the military and if I was a veteran, and I said, no, I'm not a veteran, because at that time I didn't consider I was a veteran. That's the shame that I had. Well, I was brought to Protect Our Defenders, also to a MST director from Fort Harrison, and here I am today now becoming an advocate and use my voice for change, because I disagree with a lot of the statistics that are being shown today.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. We put up a number of stories over the last several years at joemiller.us, including a story that incidentally came out in May of 2013 entitled More Than 34,000 Male Veterans Treated for Military Sexual Assault. It looks like a total in 2012 of 85,000 veterans treated, meaning that of that 85,000, 51,000 women, 34,000 male, 4,000 have sought disability benefits. Just this past week, we put up a story entitled Cover Up Gay Rape in Military is Completely Underreported by the Pentagon, suggesting that the numbers reported by the Pentagon are deflated, that they may be 15 times higher than what the Pentagon is reporting. Tell us what you know about the numbers that the Pentagon, that the government, the federal government is reporting on this issue.
Yes, I read that APA report myself, and the APA report to me is more accurate than what the Pentagon itself is reporting. About a year and a half ago, the Pentagon, or the DOD, hired the RAND Corporation to take over and come up with the statistics on military sexual trauma. With the RAND Corporation, what they were doing, and this is my feeling, is they're manipulating the numbers because, of course, our government wants to bring those numbers down. They want to sweep this under the rug, and they've been doing that, and they're still trying to do it. And by sweeping it under the rug, what they're doing, they're not counting the rapes that continue. Let's say in my case, I was raped 4 times, but my rape counts as 1.
Right.
So let's say at least everybody was raped twice. Then those numbers should be doubled. But what about the ones that were raped 4, 5, and 6 times? Those are separate incidents and separate crimes. They're not counting that. They're also counting that in order to be raped, it has to be penetration. Well,
right.
We all know that rape is not just penetration.
Yeah, the estimate here is that if all sexual assaults are included, then this is, again, getting to the APA, the American Psychiatric Association, 180,000 men per year. And of those, about a third are what they call penetrative attacks, again, reflecting that the RAND Corporation is way understates the numbers. And we've only got about 5 minutes left here, but what's causing this? I mean, what is the environment? Again, I'll refer you back to reports that the numbers are now increasing even beyond what they used to be. Tell us what your theory is.
My theory on the reason the numbers are increasing is basically people are becoming more aware that there is somebody they can turn to because it's in the media now. The veterans, Department of Veterans Affairs is starting to recognize it. Therefore, people can come forward. 10 years ago, Joe, I couldn't come forward. Back when I got discharged, nobody listened to me. My counsel's report disappeared. Well, things are changing now. And when things change like that, in a positive manner where we can speak out, of course the numbers are going to increase because people are going to be coming out of the black box like I did.
Now, as an advocate, obviously, you have received some input from others that have been affected like you, family members. You were mentioning during the break that you received an email from someone. You want to tell our audience a little bit about that?
Yes, I received an email from a coworker. There's a lot of retaliation when it comes to military sexual trauma in various ways. It just doesn't come from the military. And I spoke about my military sexual trauma in my office when I was employed, and 2 weeks later I was terminated, stating that my conversation was vulgar and inappropriate in the workplace, and I do have a letter that shows that. And one of the ladies that was my coworker sent me this email yesterday because she had read the story that you posted in your opinions that I had wrote, and she said this. Speaking of the story, this explains so much of what happened here. And I'll leave the entity out for now, I wept as I read your story. Thank you for sharing this with me. As a wife of an ex-military enlisted husband, I can see for pride's sake how this is constantly swept under the rug and kept secret. How horrific is this? God bless you as you go forward. You have all our prayers to bring this to a strong forefront that must be addressed and put to rest for all your sakes. You will forever be my honorable friend and co-worker. Consider me an advocate for the cause of freedom from your prison. You are a POW, and we must bring you home honorably. God bless.
Wow.
And I have to admit that brought me to tears because it was just in 2013 for the very first time that somebody told me, thank you for your service. And now that it's out in the open, people are starting to recognize it.
Where can people go, Bill, if they're faced with, if they themselves have faced this, or if they have family members that are suffering from this? Do you have any recommended groups, websites? What can people do?
Yes, I have two groups that I recommend very strongly. One is a Facebook page with one of the ladies that is in my MST community, and we're working together on breaking the silence. And if people go to Jenny Braun, BRANAM Lee, LEE, the Facebook page, she is going to be doing a story on another talk show on discharges other than honorable, like what I received.
Give us the name one more time for that Facebook.
GINNY BRANAM LEE, Jenny Braun Lee.
And if any listeners out there missed that, we'll get this podcast up tonight. You can get that at youtube.com, Joe Miller US, no dot. Any final words, Bill? We have about 45 seconds left here. Anything else you want to leave our audience with on this topic?
Well, I want to thank you for allowing me to speak to so many people about this, but I also want to thank you, big thanks to the community in Pacific City, Oregon, that was there when I had panic attacks and when I was disabled and helped me out. And, of course, Protect Our Defenders. They are awesome, and they're always out there available to help anybody in need that has MST.
And, of course, the Veterans Administration isn't always up to speed, but is this something people ought to go there for?
Yes, I know it's difficult to take that step to the VA. It was so for me. In fact, I have my examination for my disability just coming up in less than a week.
Okay, Bill Minnix, again, wrote this important article on the website about military sexual trauma. Make sure you take a look at it. It's an important issue. Stay with us. We've got more after these messages, The Joe Miller Show.